And tonight we have an amazing guest, Mr. Shane Hurd. He is a MUFON investigator with MUFON from Phoenix, Arizona. And he's going to be talking to us about his procedures and what it takes to become a MUFON investigator and some of his experiences and all that. But before we begin, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has recently joined. Thank you to all our new members. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Some highlights coming up later in December. We are going to be having a special presentation on December 19th. We're going to be discussing Three Eye Atlas and discussing some of your impressions, and people are welcome to take part in that and to join us. We're still trying to figure out whether we're going to be doing mostly a Zoom session or whether we're going to be doing it online, but I think that we're probably going to maybe do a little bit of both, but stay tuned for that. And as well, we're going to be starting our discussion group on Thursdays later this month. So we are going to be having a discussion with Miss Sarah Holton, and Catherine Holton, and she's going to be talking with us about her experiences as a contactee. So look forward to that. So today we are going to be meeting with Mr. Shane Hurd. Hi, Shane. How are you doing?
Pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing fine. Like I was saying to our guests, I didn't say it, but I was just gonna sort of let them know that here in Montreal we have in certain parts of Canada, for the most part, but I think Alberta doesn't do it, and maybe some parts of the East Coast. But we had the daylight savings time, and we had advanced. And did we advance or went back? I think we went back an hour, and so I did not take that into account when I originally sent out the invitation to Mr. Hurd. So I'm just sort of like, blah, 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 going about my business. And then I started looking at my emails. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's writing to me saying, I'm logged in. Where are you? And my heart, my soul left my body because we didn't have each other's numbers. So it was just sort of like, damn it. So, and in Arizona, they don't do any time change at all. So it was just horrible. So I was about to text my mother, say, I don't know. I don't think what's happening today because they can be, but I mean, I saw his login. I was like, oh, thank God, Savior. So I'm so happy. As you can see, that you're here tonight, and
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to speaking with you. So, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved with MUFON? I'm always excited to
Yeah.
know about that.
Absolutely. Well, I was a very religious person
Mm-hmm.
and consumed by that. And I was a young man raising a family and trying to get a career going. And just that was my focus. But, I'd always had a slight interest in UFOs. My family had some history in the 50s
Oh,
and just some other things in my childhood. Yeah.
okay.
And, but I buried it because it was kind of a thing that
Mm,
religion poo-pooed, having
yeah.
any interest in that. And but I got to a point where I was about 55 years old, and I'm like, I'm interested in this. I I watched the occasional television show on UFOs and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But in 2010, I really got interested, and I decided I was going to begin researching, and I did. I read a couple hundred books, and then movies and documentaries, and just consumed everything. I got on Facebook, started connecting with people, really liked it. I understood that there was something to it.
Mm,
And really, after a few years, I said, well, I don't want to just read about other people's experiences. I'd like to have my own. I'd like to get involved. I'd like to play, just that kind of a person.
mhm.
And so I looked around, and MUFON was an organized effort to study UFOs, and you could even train to be an investigator. And I said, there's my ticket. I can participate in that way. And so I joined MUFON in 2015 as a member. In 2017, I became an investigator. And then in 2020, I became the assistant director.
Okay.
And
Wow.
uh, and then I also released my book in 2020. So
Okay.
it all culminated, 2020. I've investigated a couple hundred cases, and I'm also a member of the MUFON's experiencer resource team,
Okay.
and that deals specifically with contactees,
Mm-hmm.
abductees,
Mm-hmm.
experiencers, and that kind of thing. So I have close to 100 of those cases under my belt as well. So, it's so fascinating. It's so interesting. And now I'm an experiencer myself. And so it's
Wow.
been really just a great, amazing, fun thing. The people are cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be happier.
Okay, wow. So I just realized it's a bit early because we had a technical issue with YouTube guys. So if you're just sort of coming in right now, we'll just sort of like, I think it's like we have another 7 minutes when it starts at 8, but we'll reintroduce you again, and
Okay.
we'll talk a little bit more. But so just to sort of burn some time, guys, if you yourself are an experiencer and you yourself have had some contact in regards to your own life, I'd love to hear it. I'm sure Shane would love to hear it as well. And just to sort of like get off, just sort of get off topics, and we'll come back. We'll round about again at 8 o'clock. But it's funny because I've for people that know me, and especially in my own personal life, UFOs is something that I've always known as a kid, and me too. I've had my own personal experiences. My mom had her own personal experiences, and I remember at the time it wasn't something that, again, you didn't discuss, and I mean, it wasn't so much about religion for me, but it was more about the idea that it was just weird. Like, you're a
Yeah.
total weirdo, so shut up. And but I sort of kept it to myself and all that. And I'm at a point now where I don't know what to believe, because I know for myself what's what, because I was first exposed to this at 8 years old. I'm 54. I'm going to be 54. So like, I mean, I've been down this road many a times, and again, my mom also had experiences, and it's interesting that we've be having these hearings, and people have been coming out, and Capitol Hill and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I also realize that sometimes the government tries to hijack something for its own ends. And, having had your experience and having had it from both sides as an experiencer and also from MUFON, how do you feel about that with the hearings and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
what do you think about
So
that?
yeah, I was glad when it was announced and when it went into play, and that was about 2020. I think June of 2020 was the first report that came out. Had like 144 cases, and they only identified one. So that was kind of cool that they, would do that. But you have to remember that the United States government has played this
Mm,
game for 80
yeah.
years. Project Grudge, Project Sign, Project Blue Book.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about ridiculing people and, telling everybody there's nothing to it, while at the same time, they're very interested and they are investigating
Yeah.
and they are doing things. And so, but they played that game for till 2017, when it finally broke out that ATIP existed,
Yeah.
and that was a UFO program. And all of that ended up causing, that taboo that we were just talking about to sort of wane, and Congress began to move on it. So I'm sorry, I'm making a long story. I
No,
needed that
no.
background. Um, Partly, I'm still hopeful,
Okay.
but part of me, I'm expecting them to pull the rug out from under us,
Yeah.
and they already have,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of times. So, but it's a different world today. You can't keep things secret like you
No.
used to. People won't play that game anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, out of World War II, highest respect for the government and the
Exactly.
military. But now,
Mm-hmm.
people, aren't quite as quick to just believe what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And, for good reason, we all know, not just UFOs, but other things.
Yeah.
Um, I'm hopeful, but I'm also skeptical that we're going to get any kind of true disclosure in the form of them admitting to doing the bad things that probably were done over those years, the people and breaking laws and that kind of thing. So I think they're not going to come out and reveal all that. I think it'll take some kind of catastrophic thing like a whistleblower who we've had whistleblowers, but we still don't have any proof. And
Yeah.
so that's where they're going to try and keep this thing just spinning and churning in this nexus of misinformation, disinformation, a little bit of truth, out and out lies, all that kind of thing. So I just say wait and see. And the other thing I think about is at any moment, at any time, they
Mm.
could disclose, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so maybe that's what it's going to take. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that is the
Mm-hmm.
plan. I don't know, but I do know this, that it's real. I've had experiences personally. I have interviewed hundreds of people. Um, I have seen video, photo, radar evidence, all these things that are an indicator that there is a reality to this. It's just what is it? We don't know, right? We
Exactly.
have theories and possibilities. So
Mhm.
I think we need to keep people like us need to keep it up and keep
Absolutely.
doing this. And in time we can grind it down,
Mm-hmm.
but it may take longer than we think. I just don't know. I'm just as befuddled as anybody, and frustrated and all those things.
Yeah.
It's not gonna, even if it's bad news, I want to know. I mean, I think
Yeah.
most intelligent people, even if it's bad news, at least you want to prepare, know
Mm-hmm.
what to think
Mm-hmm.
about, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's kind
Yeah.
of it.
Well, and I agree with you on pretty much on all of that. Like, I mean, 1,000% on all of that because I think at the end of the day, you just have to be honest. I think you just need to be honest with people, and I think also we're at a point technologically where you can't hide this sort of thing. Anyways, it's 8 o'clock. So, guys, I want to just say hi. Welcome to the Star Season Lightworkers Collective. My name is Crystal. Welcome to the show. And we started just a little bit early just because we were just chatting a bit, but we just want to start up again for our arrivals because of just for those of you who may live in certain states in the United States or certain parts of Canada, because of the time change that took place over the weekend. I wasn't in line with Shane, and it was this whole big sort of kerfuffle. So we finally sort of connected finally on Zoom, and we started a little bit early, just chatting, but we're officially starting now. Just want to say welcome to everybody, and tonight we have the honor of welcoming our guest, Mr. Shane Hurd. He is a MUFON investigator, and he is a Renaissance man. He's also a musician, and he's a man of science, and we're going to have so much fun tonight. And he just revealed actually, and I'm sure we'll go into it a little bit more, but he also revealed that he's also an experiencer. So this is very interesting because it's one thing to sort of come from just the technical side and to be an investigator, but when you're also coming from the experience side, it gives the whole thing a whole new different veneer. So we're really going to be diving deep tonight. So we have a long night, Shade. Sorry, we have a
That's all
long night.
right. I'm ready.
Ready to
Can't
go.
wait.
Okay, so just to sort of give us a little, can you just sort of give us a little bit background again as to how you got involved? Just sort of repeat again for our new arrivals.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I was a religious person, I was a young man. I was, building my family, trying to build a career and all of that. And my religion would really poo-poo the idea of exploring UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
But I had always had an interest. As a little kid, I was 8 years old when we went to the moon. So
Mm-hmm.
me and every other little kid in America wanted to be an astronaut, right? And it was
Yeah.
space and everything. So I've been a lifelong, have that interest. And there was a family photo of ours of a classic from the 50s UFO, a flying saucer in Muskegon, Michigan. And my family, my grandmother and stuff, they were having a picnic and they caught it. And that photo was in the family for years. I saw it as a kid. I don't know where it is now. It frustrates me
Okay.
like
Wow.
crazy. But so I have a little history that way. And then I had some paranormal things and stuff happen in my childhood.
Okay.
But as I got through life and got control of all those things, my family and my career and all that, I started watching, I think it was like UFO Files were the TV shows in the early 2000s,
Mhm.
and then UFO Hunters, and it interested me. It sparked my interest to the extent that I said, on the down low, like everyone,
Yeah.
because of the ridicule factor, I started reading. In 2010, I really started getting involved in studying it, researching it, and then um, after a while, I said, well, I would like to do more than just read about other people's experiences. I'd like to be involved myself. And I looked around, and MUFON fit the bill. It was an organized effort. It offered to train you to become an investigator, and that was my ticket right there. And then, so in 2015, I joined MUFON. 2017, I became an investigator. In 2020, I became assistant director of Arizona MUFON. And I also wrote a book and kind of encapsulated everything that I'd learned. And especially since 2017, and this presentation is really based on my book.
Hmm.
In 2017, when the TTSA came out and they revealed the government had the ATIP program and we're studying UFOs, it broke down that taboo and that thing that kept us all from talking about this like we are now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, but I thought, there's going to be a lot of interested people coming in. And if you're not careful, you can fall down some pretty silly rabbit holes,
Yeah.
right? And so I wrote this book to say, look, if you're interested in this topic, here's the 10 most important things that you need to know about and what to look out for and what to avoid and that kind of thing. And just lay it out for somebody to understand the whole big picture. And then they can drill down, in their own personal studies and research. Because, the topic of UFOs is big, right?
Yeah.
It's you could have crop circles, you can have,
Mm.
experiencers, you can have UFOs, you can just a ton of things, right? And so you kind of got to pick your lane. You can have a general knowledge of all those things, but to really dig in, it's just too big. So
Yeah.
some people specialize for that reason. But that's it. And now I've investigated, 200 cases. I'm also on an experiencer resource
Hmm.
team, which deals specifically with folks who have had abductions and experiences and contact, and have done probably close to 100 of those cases. So it's been just such a really fascinating and cool experience. And when I'll do a PowerPoint here, and I'll kind of go into greater
Sure.
detail there.
Hmm. Great. And just to follow up with what we were talking about before we officially started, I wanted to ask if it's okay before we go into the PowerPoint. You mentioned that you had had an experience, like you were also an experiencer before you went into the science and grew up and started a family and all that kind of stuff. Could you just share with us? And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to start to sort of share that now before we go into the investigation, because I think when we come out the other end of your presentation, it sort of gives us a sort of a food for thought, because it's not just a straight science, right? It's
Right.
someone going into it, especially when it happens as a child. And if it's something that happened in your family, you'll let us know. But you're sort of coming at it from a very different angle. So did you want to just sort of share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a science background in engineering. I spent 25 years in government in
Hmm.
that field. And I had that interest, but I was what you would call a nuts and bolts UFO type of viewpoint. I wanted to know, what is that metal machine flying in the air that nobody can identify? That intrigued me. Um, and so when I began my career in 2016, I had a sighting here on my horse ranch, and I videotaped it. I sent it to MUFON. They investigated. They didn't think it was anything other than something prosaic, but that got me immediately interested in investigating. I wanted to know, well, what process did you use to do
Hmm.
that? How can you tell what that was?
Hmm.
And and so, anyways, that kicked me off that side. However, as I began to get more and more cases under my belt, it was clear that there is more to this phenomena than the nuts and bolts.
Hmm.
And at the time, I called it this. Some people still do, but it's the woo woo side.
Hmm.
Woo woo, like in old science
Yeah,
fiction
yeah,
movies, woo.
yeah.
But it's the consciousness side. It's the non-physical side, and that was a big crossroads for me to come to, because I was definitely focused on engineering and science and all
Yeah.
that, which I still am. but it opened my mind and it made me a better investigator because and I'll talk more about this later, but you can't have a bias, positive or negative, when you go in to investigate these cases. And then so that's kind of a compartmentalization I have to do in my brain. But it's something it's easy to do now. But as far as my experiences, so I had that one sighting, and then after I got educated and associating with people, I began being acquainted with remote viewers, with psychics, with channelers,
Okay.
um, other investigators like myself. And I just was learning so much that what I decided to do was, again, I live on a horse ranch here in the desert in Arizona, and
Sounds
big,
lovely.
huge, yeah, it's great. And I'll apologize now. I'm on my front patio because it's furthest from my half dozen
Okay.
horses, 15 chickens, 5 dogs,
Oh, wow.
rabbits, blah blah blah, all that noise. So, but I'll apologize if they get loud.
No
But at
worries.
any rate, once a month, several times a year, probably 6, 7 times a year, I have a group of people over to the ranch at night, and we do CE5, Close Encounters of the
Oh,
Fifth Kind protocols. We
wow.
do a lot of paranormal related stuff. We do the
Mm-hmm.
voice box, we do
Mm-hmm.
dowsing rods, we do all these things. Well, after 2 or 3 months of this, we got to where we were calling them in. And so we have videos galore, 4 or 5 or 6 different occasions where these lights come and they are doing strange things before our very
Wow.
eyes.
Okay.
And yeah, and then we've had some real good paranormal experiences too. Everything positive. We're
Okay.
careful about that. And so it's really just opened my horizons on everything. And so
Wow.
now I'm a big believer in consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and how this phenomena is probably related to paranormal
Mm-hmm.
phenomena in some way, whether I don't know how, but it seems because
Yeah.
often when we get a report on a UFO sighting, there are elements to it that end up being paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
seems like not every time, but there's certain things, and even like on the ERT side with experiencers and that one of the things we notice a lot are a lot of those folks have had NDEs,
Okay.
near death experiences, and again this paranormal connection to the whole phenomena. So it's just so fascinating, interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
my mind is fully open. I I now think anything is possible until it's proven not to be.
Well,
That's
that's
the way I
great.
view everything.
Well,
That
that's
way
great.
I don't dismiss something of
Mm-hmm.
value.
Mm-hmm.
I don't develop a strong bias one way or another. I try and
Mm-hmm.
stay balanced in my thinking. So that's
Well,
it. Yeah.
that's amazing. Wow, that's incredible. That's guess who's coming back on the show? You are.
Anytime,
Eddie,
anytime.
oh my God, like you're a treasure trove. Um, so that's great. So that's an interesting way to sort of introduce this. You mentioned something about being a child, though. Did something happen to you
Oh,
as a child, or in your family something
oh,
happened? Sorry.
yes. Yeah, no, we had this family photo in 1956. My family, I wasn't born yet, but
Okay.
my grandmother and family were at a family picnic in a public park in Muskegon, Michigan.
Okay.
And the photo is of sort of like green grass and then water and then the clouds, cloudless sky. And I mean, right there, a classic flying saucer. They got a
Oh.
great 35 millimeter shot of it, one shot of it. And that circulated in our family for years. And when I was a little kid, I'd like, ooh, wow, that's so cool.
Okay.
But my grandma's passed, my mom's passed now, and we could not find that family photo. So that
Okay.
was, of interest to me then. And then as a child growing up, I had some paranormal experiences in the house that we lived in. Um,
Hmm.
and they were negative,
Okay.
unfortunately. But and I dismissed those at the time, just because
Mm.
it's hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
And then I actually had, I'm not sure if I had abduction experiences at the time, but highly strange things. My parents even took me to neurologists, and this was like in the late 60s, and tried to figure out what's going on with me. And it's strange to tell people about, but I'll just nutshell it real quick for
Yeah.
you. I would be either awake or asleep, and I would have this overwhelming noise come over me, and it was no one else could hear around me, but it was very intense. It was just like a, and it got to a point where my head hurt, and of course they were thinking, well, maybe he's epileptic or something.
Okay.
They found nothing wrong. Well, I would transition from that to where I would just I would be standing in this a round room that looked like liquid metal walls and floor and everything.
Oh.
And there was an opening on one side, and I was kind of rigidly, my body was being controlled, basically, forced to stand there and look at the hole. And then I looked down, and it was like a slide to a mezzanine or something. And it was, again, that liquid metal. And I don't know if you remember, as a little kid, you go down the slide and you get at the bottom and it kind of pops you up,
Yeah.
onto the feet.
Yeah.
It was that exact sensation. And I did that. And then I was standing immediately in front of this board, like a 4x8 sheet of plywood, maybe 4 feet away from me. And it had buttons on it. Every inch of it was covered in just a uniform pattern of buttons, and they were like multicolored, green ones, red ones, blue ones. Remind me of like an old Star Trek.
Okay. Yeah. Like computer and like little.
Computer,
yeah. Okay.
And I was just forced to stand there and look at that. And I had the notion that I was supposed to memorize the pattern of flash or whatever. And that's it. And that's all I remember. And it happened at least 4, 5, 6 times. And then it just went away. And I completely buried that from my memory. And in fact, only maybe 3, 4 years ago, I recalled it. And then I confirmed it with my mom. Hey, remember that? She says, oh yeah, that was a big deal. So anyways, I have heard through my work almost anything you can imagine. That is not as weird as some of the things I've heard. So yeah, I take that with a grain of salt, but it just makes me more complete and more whole as an investigator. Or a person involved with this.
Yeah. And I think that that's important, because I think that, well, when you have a situation, for example, like in I think it was the 60s, the Condon report. I mean, when you have something like that, which is just, because I saw the documentary about Mr. Condon, and they said even before they even started the report, he had already decided that this was like, no, and this is like BS and all that kind of stuff. And it's just horrible the way that we could have gone to a very different direction with all of this. And I mean, of course, I understand that after the Second World War and well into the 50s and early 60s, at the time when Jan Hynek was doing his own research, that, there was still the war mentality. There was still sort of like, we have to be sort of secret. And I get that. I think at the time when I was a kid, I didn't get, like, why did you stop it? But I understand coming from a war, situation where they were at war, you had more of a militaristic government as opposed to, let's say, a civilian government, then the thinking is going to be that. So I think people really need to sort of take that into account. And it's kind of like when someone who's, acted a certain way when you were younger, and you look back and you find out they were abused, or you find out that they were going through whatever, you realize, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of explains their, behavior and why they were being a jerk and all that kind of stuff. So I get that. But at the same time, I think it helps to be someone who's complete, because you can see both sides, and I think that's wonderful for you. Now we can start your presentation. Do you have a bit more lighting? I notice you're outside and it's getting dark now. I don't know if you have like a little.
I know. Let's see. This is.
No, just for you. I'm just saying, so when you.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm good. If you can see me.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'll let you take it away, Sam. And
okay.
All right. So let's go.
All right, let's see. I will try and share.
Yeah.
And
again, everybody, if you've had any kind of experiences or any kind of things you'd like to share with us, let us know in the comments below. It'd be nice to sort of see what kind of experiences people have had and all that. And it would be great to sort of hear from you. So I will let Mr. Shane Hurd start with his presentation. Here we go.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hmm.
So it's entitled Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, A Beginner's Guide to Researching UFOs. And uh, I'm focusing on the principles, the techniques, and logic for investigating UFOs. MUFON investigations, experience a resource team, and some videos of interest. Uh, so we touched a little bit on my biography, but there's some things here we didn't discuss. So I'm actually going to retire in March. So I've been uh, at my 20-year government career, 27 years, a 27-year government career in the fields of civil engineering, geographic information systems, information technologies, and I'm a graduate of Arizona State University's Certified Public Manager program. I studied the subject of UFOs and UAP, and ultimately in 2015, I joined MUFON, became the field investigator. I have a couple hundred cases under my belt. I'm a STAR team member, ERT member, and I serve as the assistant state director for Arizona MUFON. Um, and I like to say, as a member of the space race generation, I have a lifelong space and science nerd and geek. And it was the Phoenix Lights incident in my hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, that kind of nudged me in the direction that, I need to look into this. I enjoy the media side of it. I've been featured on Ancient Aliens, History's Greatest Mysteries, podcasts, radio, television, and documentaries. And I'm a musician, a car guy, amateur astronomer, horse owner, and I enjoy a good bourbon now and then.
So do I.
Who doesn't? All right. So, kind of, we had touched a little bit earlier in 2010. I was curious, and I was already developing an appetite for more information, and there's a wide variety of information available about UFOs, but some of it's dubious, some of it's plausible, and some of it is really good, really factual. And I was convinced in the reality of the phenomena, something explainable was really happening before our very eyes. And now, after several years of research uh, and becoming an investigator, I am now an author. And I would never imagine myself being here, but it's been quite a trip. And so, like I say, UFOs is, I say it's really about people, and people in UFOs are cool. I've met the nicest, most genuine, caring people ever, and I can't say enough good about my experience with UFOs. But you'll see these four books here. This is kind of uh, paints the picture for my evolution. So in 2010, I decided I am going to get into this and figure it out. So the first book I happened across was The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso and Bill Burns. And Bill Burns, you might know him. He's the editor of UFO Magazine. He's an attorney, but he's been on television. He's a big UFO guy. He was the lead in UFO Hunters, which to me is one of the best UFO
Yeah, it was a good show.
television shows ever.
Yeah.
But after I read that book, I was kind of disappointed. I thought some of it made sense, but some of it seemed so contrived. I just felt like, man, I'm not sure. And I kind of almost gave up. But coincidentally, right at that time, the next book there, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, was written by Leslie Kane, and she has now become pretty famous.
Yeah, she's good.
As a person that, broke the whole 2017 thing. I think it was called Auras and Black Budgets, was the first article in the New York Times that exposed ATIP.
Exactly.
And but she had history before. She was associated with Bud Hopkins, and who became known for his working with abductees. And she also was instrumental in getting the Cometa report from France in 1999 translated into English and published here in the U.S. And she's an investigative reporter, and this book was written like it. And it gave me all the confidence in the world that, hey, there is good information, good data, smart people working on this. This is worth my time. And then I followed that up with Richard Dolan's
Mm-hmm.
UFOs and the National Security
Yeah.
State. It's kind of a 2 volume set.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like the nails in the coffin of my doubt after reading that book, those 2 volumes. And then finally, the book on the right is my book, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, A Beginner's Guide to Researching UFOs. And I wrote this after 2017 and seeing how the taboo was breaking down and more people were willing to openly express interest in UFOs. And I found that in my journey, there were a lot of rabbit holes that I went down that I didn't need to. And at first, it was difficult to discern, good information from not good information. But I soon began to figure that out. And so, what this book is wrote it uh, really to the newly interested people coming in, and it's just a concise layout. And you'll see my presentation kind of follows the book about what is important, what is nonsense, how to navigate it, and just to get a feel for the big picture of this topic and its history and our place in it right now. And so that was my purpose in writing that, as well as just encapsulating my knowledge and experience and having something for my grandkids, type of thing. So that is who's speaking to you and a bit of my background. And now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. So one thing I'll say is, uh, it may be obvious, but there's nuances to it. UFO reports are kind of their own animal, and they're not necessarily an indication of the number of sightings, right? So if we have 10,000 reports in a year, that doesn't mean there are 10,000 sightings. I think a lot of people say, oh, it's only people report 10%. I'm like, no, 1 out of 10 people that see a UFO, do they report it? I don't think so, because of the taboo. They don't know whom to report it, or
Mm-hmm.
feel inclined to report it. I think that number could easily be 100.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a million
Yeah.
sightings a year.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's more
Mm-hmm.
realistic.
Yeah.
So, what I'm going to talk about, though, as a MUFON investigator, it's about the reports, right? You don't have a report, you don't have anything, and so what to do with a report, how to investigate it, and what it means in the end. That's kind of what we're going to talk about. So, let me go to the first aspect here, and that is, what is UAP? Um, So, unidentified aerial phenomena has now been changed by the government to unidentified anomalous phenomena, which I don't disagree with. That's fine. Both are the new term used to describe what was formerly referred to as UFO, or unidentified flying object. So, why the change? Well, first of all, over the years, the UFO definition has been lost, the unidentified flying object, and a new unscientific context was created, either by design or by accident. The term UFO became synonymous with flying saucer or alien craft, which would ironically be identified. And then this misnomer contributed to the topic becoming considered, unscientific and ridiculed, not only in scientific, government, military circles, the media, but even by the general public. And that's that taboo or ridicule we were discussing
Mm.
earlier.
Yeah.
And UAP has a broader definition that describes what is being seen in our skies and space than the term UFO, flying saucer. And think about it. Now, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you were seeing craft. That was kind of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now we see orbs of light, we see spirals in the sky, pillars of light, all sorts of strange visual phenomena. Um, and it's really curious. And so I think when you again, when you're looking at data, you're creating data through reports, you want to be able to categorize it, slice it up in a meaningful way so that you can look for patterns and that sort of thing and discern something from it. And so I think using that term is helpful. The government feels there's less ridicule and taboo on them now that they're showing an interest publicly, and they're going to use this term that makes them feel more scientific and less woo woo or whatever.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the issue.
but there are still some purists out there who still prefer to call it UFO, such as myself.
Yeah, and yeah,
I'm just being honest.
I agree. In fact, it depends on my audience, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I use the terms interchangeably mostly,
Yeah.
and I too, I'm nostalgic. I like the
Yeah, me
UFO
too.
term, yeah, what it means and
Yeah.
all that, because that's special in itself and
Yeah,
meaningful.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and if you keep stripping away that stuff just to be technical, you
Mm-hmm.
lose something, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yep. Okay, so that kind of sets a foundation. So what we're talking about, UAP, is just unidentified phenomena that is being witnessed all over the world by millions of people every day, all day long. And I'm not exaggerating. That is a fact. Okay, so misidentification from an investigator's standpoint, this is probably the most common disposition of a report in the end, meaning misidentification of prosaic objects such as astronomical features, aircraft, satellite, drones. It's extremely common. In fact, these account for, in my mind tonight, and what I'm going to say to you guys, around 85% of all reports.
Okay.
It can also include optical illusions, natural phenomena, aircraft, that whole thing. So, so just to say, okay, I like to tell this little joke. There's a saying attributed to Mark Twain, and he said, "There's little white lies, there's dirty lowdown lies, and then there's statistics."
Okay.
So I think we all know statistics can
Mm-hmm.
be applied or misapplied or twisted, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also statistics aren't, they're not easy to work with all the time. And so I've got this chart here that I want to just kind of explain myself a little bit. So Project Blue Book was the Air Force's study of UFOs from 1952 through 1969. And it was largely a PR thing. They weren't investigating in earnest.
No.
And any of the cases that were really good didn't go to Project Blue Book. They went to a secret pipeline, right? A classified
Mm-hmm.
pipeline. But interestingly, there's an organization, a think tank called the Battelle Institute, and they still exist. And they were chartered with the goal of reviewing some of those Project Blue Book cases and create a special report. In this case, this is special report number 14. And if you'll notice, in the left-hand column are the explanations that they assigned, and then the number of cases listed, and then the percentage of the total. So they took a sample of 3,201 cases. You can see there in the bottom middle.
Mm-hmm.
And of those, 450 were balloons, 817 astronomical, the classic planet Venus, that kind of thing, aircraft, miscellaneous, psychological. I want to draw your attention to the next two: insufficient info and unknown. And you'll notice the percentage of unknown is 21.5%. The difference between insufficient info and unknown is insufficient info means I didn't have enough data or evidence to say what this was. I couldn't even say it was an airplane or not. It was just, I didn't have enough data. Couldn't do anything with it. But look at unknown. What unknown means is I had enough information to eliminate all of the things you see above it.
Wow. Okay.
And I still ended up with
wow.
689.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that 21.5% of this body of 3,201 are true unknowns. Now, I say 85% because of the couple hundred cases I've done, about 15%, 12 to 15%, it fluctuates, are unknowns. The rest are identified or insufficient info, that kind of a thing. So I just wanted to illustrate
Mm-hmm.
that, that, and some people throw out there, oh, 95% of all reports are, eliminated, and some even more. And nonsense. It's the number and the individual cases that you analyze and produce these statistics dictates that kind of a thing. But I think in general, you know, 9 out of 10 times it's a mistaken identity,
Okay.
give or take.
Yeah.
That's just, but again, that's just reporting, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
isn't sightings and that isn't experiences like we talked about. I think those are in the millions. So,
Okay. And
all right.
would you say, for example, what's happening now, and there was a sweet spot, I think, between the early 2000s and maybe the last 5 years, 5 years ago, where people were catching everything on camcorder and on their phone. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of possibility of deep fakes and stuff like that. But I think like maybe 5 years ago, we really didn't have that kind of technology. We didn't have that kind of editing software. And so a lot of people were catching things, and whether I think it's something or not, or whether it's Venus or not, people are really catching some very interesting things. Where does that fall in, for example, on this table here?
Yeah.
You know?
So, for me, uh, I'm going to go into it at length here
Okay.
shortly, but let me just say at this point, um, it is extremely difficult to believe any photo or video that you get.
Mm-hmm.
However, that being said, we have been trained, and we have tools to be able to eliminate hoaxing, for the most part in
Okay.
videos and photos. Um, but then there's always still, look, I wasn't there, I didn't see it, didn't hear
Mm-hmm.
it, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't smell it, I didn't taste it. I'm taking your word on it.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that those things aren't valuable. I think they're extremely valuable. It's probably the best data that we get, but nothing is ironclad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to take all of it with a grain of salt. And of course, as you pointed out today, oh my gosh, it's just,
Yeah, I
I
mean
guess I
anything's
just get
possible.
jaded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know?
It's just so, yeah, it's
Yeah.
so impossible to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not left in the dark. We have tools. We can figure that out for the most part. And I think if there ever is a big deal disclosure
Mm-hmm.
or confirmation, photo or video is going to be part of it. But it's just a composite of other things because face it, truth and proof are very subjective,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and that's a big problem. So what I might accept as proof, you might not. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
but really, what proof and truth is just what the majority choose to accept as such. I mean, in all honesty, that's the way it is. So we have to be educated, and we have to, be understanding, and we need to grab onto what data we can for those folks that need that. It's complex. It's not easy.
But just one last thing before we continue.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the stuff that's been happening, well, was happening last year in New Jersey, when they had all these drones and all these news agencies. Because it's one thing to have Joe Blow, your neighbor, film it, but when you have these news agencies, different types of news, filming these drones that were flying over New Jersey, and they were kind of weird and strange and all that. How does that fall into that category? Is that would you consider that
Yeah.
absolute proof? Because it's not, again, it's not on your cell phone. These are people with a lot of equipment taking their news van to wherever and descending upon New Jersey, and the government at that time wasn't even able to answer that question. I found that whole thing kind of weird, though. What do you think?
Yeah, it's extremely weird. And you feel it's weird because it is weird.
Mm-hmm.
The government's explanations were nonsense.
Yeah.
Now, what happened exactly? I don't know, but certainly it didn't happen the way they said. There were incursions of unusual craft and other phenomena, and it was probably mixed with some prosaic stuff. Probably was drones, but there's a lot of that didn't add up. And I think this is just the model for how difficult it's going to be to crack this nut, because of the obfuscation, the lying, the misdirection. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. However, we just keep at it. The people need to just say that's not acceptable. We all know there's something going. The DOD, the Navy, you all admit there's something going on. UFOs are real. You don't know what they are, and you don't believe that they're yours or another nation's, and they're otherworldly. So, okay, that's it. I think that's our disclosure. That's all we're going to get, because everything else has legal implications for the people involved, and they don't want to face those. And among other things, national security and other stuff. But that's a crutch, that explanation. So. And here's the other thing. I might talk more about it later, but
Sure.
The New Jersey thing was pretty freaky, right? Got everyone's attention for about 2 weeks. But then what happened? Well, you know what? I got to pay my mortgage. I got to take my kids to school. I got to take my aging parent to the doctor. I mean, real life sets in real quick, and we move on. I mean, look at, sadly, school shootings, right?
Yeah, I know.
We're horrified, gripped by that at first, and now there's been hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And we don't even hear about them.
Yeah.
It's just humanity. That's the way we are. We, in the end, we're survivalists. We need food, clothing, and shelter, and that trumps everything else if push comes to shove. So
but
that's kind of the.
If I may, I think there's also a certain amount of media control, without getting into the conspiracy aspect of it, but also the news themselves stopped reporting on it. I don't think it ever stopped. I think it was just the media were told to pipe down and to stop talking about it. But that's just my own 2 cents. I'm just sort of putting it out there, because you're right. People do move on, but at the same time, people were talking about it. It was everywhere. And then all of a sudden the news stopped talking about it. So that's control of the media. Anyways.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Moving on.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right. So here's another issue. So as an investigator, you have to deal with the largest body of, misidentifications, but there are also hoaxes. And I think this is notable. The definition of a hoax is this: an act meant to trick or deceive, to cheat. Now that irritates me, and I'll try not to swear. It frustrates me. But hoaxes are a very small percentage of our reports, but they're a big problem. And one of the things that happens is it creates this boy who cried wolf impact that gives debunkers a convenient, hey, if one of them's fake, they're all fake, right? That's the excuse that they use. And so they damage our ability to find the truth. It's serious stuff. And some hoaxes can result in very dire consequences for those who have been hoaxed or those hoaxing. People have lost a great deal because of these hoaxes: money, integrity, relationships, even their very lives. It's happened. And let me just say, in the old days, much like this photo here, the only way you would be able to perpetrate a hoax is just either lie, tell a story, or if you're going to have, throw a hubcap up in the air and click a 35 millimeter photo of it. That was what you had on your hands, right? But nowadays, we were talking about, you can create on your phone, for crying out, very realistic looking videos and photos and stuff. And it's just, it overwhelms the entire internet. Everybody, you're just buried in all this nonsense, and you can't find the wheat for the weeds.
No, that's why I was saying, 5 years ago, it was just like the 2000s to, let's say, 2020.
Yeah.
People had phones, people had cameras, but we didn't have the software. And
Yeah.
now with all the software, you can forget about it. You know, like
Yeah.
the software
It's
just makes it almost next to impossible. So when you watch something on YouTube, you see third phase of moon. I mean, they seem to
yes.
have some interesting stuff, but again, I have to question it. Whereas before, if I see something from, let's say, 1990 or 95, sorry,
Mhm.
or from 2000, I'm more inclined to believe it because I know they didn't have that kind of,
Yeah.
ability. And also, someone like Bruce Maccabee could take someone who was also an optical investigator. He was able to sort of take some of the best known film and actually look at them and explore them to see whether they were fakes or not. So we don't have stuff like that anymore. Unfortunately, we've passed a certain era. Yeah,
It's a shame.
yeah, it is.
So my final conclusion on that is in a world of uh in the UAP UFO world, it's inherently ambiguous data. And the last thing I need is some jerk trying to interfere with that search for truth by lying, deceiving, and cheating me out of it. And that's what I feel like. And that's what makes me mad. Why are you messing around with I'm taking this serious
Yeah.
and it's meaningful to me and many people. And you're just, minimizing it, mocking it, or just actively preventing me from learning the truth. It's
Hmm.
maddening. So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's something we have to deal with.
Yeah. But there's also people who
Okay.
are afraid too, right? Because they're afraid that if you
Oh,
find the truth, then it sort of puts them out of their bubble. You know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot to it. There's psychology. There's a lot, and I get it. It's not it is not an easy thing to be involved with for sure. Um, okay, so here's one thing that I latch onto and rely on and keeps me grounded, and that's the scientific method. If you see the chart on the side, you approach every investigation in this similar way. So the first thing in the scientific method is you ask a question, and then you know it might be for us, hey, what's that thing in the sky? And then you do some background research and you say, well, it's, there's no airplanes, didn't make any noise. And, you go through that process. And then you construct a hypothesis and you say, well, uh, maybe that's a flying saucer or whatever. And then you test it, you do an experiment. Maybe you say, hey, I saw it on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. I'm going to go out every night or on Tuesday night and see if I can capture it again, that kind of thing. And then you analyze the data and you draw a conclusion. You say, yeah, it appeared again and there was no explanation. It's UFO. Or, oh, I found out the military trains on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. and that's what I was seeing. And then so you revise your theory. And then you report your results and you try and get peer review on it to make sure you didn't make any mistakes and you got it. So that's kind of the method. So but a little deeper explanation here. So the scientific method is the process in which science is performed, and it can build on previous knowledge and develop a more sophisticated understanding of its topics of study over time. So I like to say, look, first we mastered fire, then we mastered electricity, and then we, split the atom, right? And those were all steps in a long process for, getting us to where we are today, good or bad. So the process involves making a hypothesis, deriving predictions from them as logical consequences, and then carry out experiments based on those predictions to determine whether the original prediction was correct. So, but here's the rub with the study of UAP and UFOs, it's very difficult to even ever observe one. It happens randomly and in a time and place of its choosing and not ours. So it's not like you can get one and bring it in the lab and break it down, right? We are at a serious disadvantage from a scientific perspective. We're left with collecting data visually through cameras and radar systems and other things. And if they really do have captured craft, that's another story. But for the most part, as far as we know, uh, it's extremely difficult to study because you just can't get it. The scientific method requires intelligence and imagination and an open mind. So you can't be this closed-minded scientist that just already has the answer before he even does his experiments, right? That just doesn't work. You have to be open to everything. And it's not a fixed set of standards or procedures to follow, but it's an ongoing cycle. It's iterative, like, ask a question, do the research, construct a hypothesis, test it, analyze the data, and go back and do it over again. That's really how it works. And then finally, I think that applying that process is the way in which we can yield quantitative and qualitative data that can be taken seriously and will lead to a defendable theory or identification of UAP. And so that's kind of the place I think we're all living right now. Is we've got the government engaged, the military's engaged, you have independent organizations such as MUFON engaged. We're all looking at the data, we're collecting it, we're analyzing it, we're sharing it. So I think we're in a good space from that perspective. But I think it's just we have some gatekeepers that are keeping the clamps down on the general public really getting a real clear view of where we're really at. But this is a big part of the investigation for sure. Now, forms of evidence. So we've talked about a few forms of evidence that provide data and information that will help yield an identification or eliminate a prosaic explanation are things like eyewitness accounts, trace evidence, photo, video, and radar imagery. So those are the forms of evidence that we typically deal with. Now, I will say, well, first, let me say a little bit about the witness testimony. So again, if you don't have an eyewitness testimony, you don't have a report, you don't have anything, you're not doing a thing, right? It's the most important pillar in an investigation is your eyewitness. However, eyewitnesses are the least reliable form of data. And I'm not criticizing people. It's just when you are faced with a potentially traumatic event like that, your brain, have you ever had an accident or been in a car accident and it happens like that fast? You don't even remember what happened. Your brain kind of does you a solid, I think, and says, you don't want to know all the detail, right?
Okay.
So maybe it's a protection for us in that way. But at any rate, it's extremely important. And there's there is a level of credibility that goes with an eyewitness. So, for example, you have pilots, police, scientists, military, government officials. They can all be credible eyewitnesses because they are trained observers, and they do it under intense pressure and stress, right? Military, police, could be even scientific. You'd be dealing with some dangerous things. And so those folks, you take what they have to say, seriously. And then I threw in government officials not because they have any expertise, but because they have a lot to lose by revealing that, hey, I saw a flying saucer, right? Their credibility is everything to them. And so when one comes forward and says it, I really listen to that. That person is risking it all.
Yeah.
And that to me adds credibility to that report.
But when you, but when you have somebody, for example, these whistleblowers that come forward, you definitely have to sort of take that take that as some sort of reliability, but also I understand you're right when it comes to eyewitnesses. Eyewitnesses are kind of the worst in terms of any kind of reliability. However, when I think about, for example, a flap where you have something like the Hudson Valley UFO, and the Hudson Valley, when you have like 2,000, or like when you have the Phoenix Lights, where you have thousands, like tens of thousands of people seeing a craft move slowly over the, for example, over Phoenix, then you have to say, well, it's not just one person. These are tens of thousands of people that are seeing the Phoenix Lights. And, what's her name there? Miss Katen, the Dr. Katen, who took good shots and good photos. And you even have Fife Symington, who was, I think, the governor at the time or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Yeah, I saw it," and he's a pilot. So when you have thousands of people, how does the eyewitness fall into that category? Like, what happens to then at the eyewitness level? You know?
Yeah, for sure. A mass sighting, well, actually, a two-person sighting
Mm-hmm.
is higher credibility than a one-person sighting, and a two or more person sighting that don't know each other
Mm-hmm.
is gold if you can get it.
Yeah. Well,
You
Phoenix
know,
Lights, right? So because people don't
yeah,
know each
and
other.
yep, and then a mass sighting is the holy grail, and we
Yeah.
had it 1997, just like you said.
Yeah.
So that credibility, that case is, in my top three, four, five for
Mm-hmm.
credible cases. And in fact, Arizona MUFON, we have our monthly meetings in the Arizona Historical Society Museum,
Mm-hmm.
and we have an exhibit in the State Historical Society Museum of the Phoenix Lights incident. And people, when you go learn about the Hohokam and the Wild West in Arizona, one of the
Mm-hmm.
things you're going to also learn about is the Phoenix Lights, which I think is just absolutely cool.
That is super cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, it is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's one pillar of the evidence. The other is trace evidence. It's extremely valuable if you can get it, but the problem is it's really hard to get. But what I'm talking about in trace evidence, it's stuff that you can collect. It's physical, and you can create data from it and analyze it. So things like disturbed soil, uh, broken branches in a tree, burned grass, um, radioactivity or chemical traces, smoke, fire, flame, all of these things that are physical that can be collected, noted, are really valuable. But they're rare because mostly that's going to be from a landing or a crash. No civilians have ever, to my knowledge, been involved with a crash. And then some of the landing stuff, perhaps, yes, but the physical evidence is rare. So photo, video, and radar imagery. Now that is the kind of evidence that we definitely work with a lot. And that's mostly what we get. And I think that if we ever do identify UAP, or if it is disclosed by a government, uh, imagery will no doubt play a part in the authentication of the UAP. They're going to show us photos and videos. It'll just depend on the circumstances and who is presenting it as evidence. So, you're probably going to have physical evidence, a craft or an alien or and photo and video and testimony from, people, or trotting them out with the president or whatever it is. you know that's the level of proof that people are going to need. um you know the classic land on the White House lawn thing, and all your TV people live would have to be there. I mean, it would be, it'd be a big deal. And that to me is the only way that you're going to remove this whole doubt thing, is something like that. So forms of evidence is very important. Okay, classic cases. Excuse me. I include this in the book and in this discussion because I think they're very valuable. Some people will say, oh, that happened 40 years ago, 50
Mm-hmm.
years ago. Why are we,
Mm-hmm.
no. Some cases have strong evidence, like photograph evidence. Some cases have trace evidence. Some are interesting because of who the eyewitnesses were and the testimony they gave. The point is, each case has strength and weaknesses when it comes to evidence and what we can learn from them. And I just cite a few here. In my book, I cite more, but here's the classic cases I find compelling and why. So the first one is Los Angeles in 1942. And that's the photo you see there to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically, those are floodlights on the coast of Los Angeles, trained on what you can see is like a disc with a dome on it. And then above it, those little flashes of light are actually flak, or the shells exploding. They fired 1,400 rounds
Yeah.
of shells at this thing. and it got caught in the newspaper. And so to me, that visual is really striking, along with the testimony. It was military, all those other things. Um, the Roswell, well, let me read my bullet points. The Socorro case happened in 1964, and Lonnie Zamora was a police officer, and he saw a landed UFO, and uh, he drove up on it, observed it. Two people people were in it,
Beings.
or around it,
Yeah.
got in it, yeah, beings, and took off. And it really disturbed him. But this was the case that actually turned J. Allen Hynek
Yeah.
from skeptic
Hmm.
to believer. He later confessed. So
Yeah.
the Phoenix Lights case, that's got some video and photo evidence,
Hmm.
as well as eyewitness testimony from mass observers. And I like to tell, I would mention that exhibit in the Arizona Historical Society Museum. There's a big map on the wall, and it has like a little push pin with the time and the location that a phone call was made to either the police, 911, or whomever. And you can see the trajectory of these craft as they flew across the state as the reports were made. So you have a little pin here, 708, you know, 730, blah, 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 all the way across the state. It's a neat visual because you can just, it depicts the flight path of this thing based on the reports. Hey, I just saw this above me. So I think that's really cool. Um, then the Los Angeles case we talked about, the Roswell has a little bit of everything. Oh my gosh, that's probably the most reported on case
Yeah. I'm
in
tired of
history.
Roswell. I'm fed up.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
However, there's some really good stuff with it. I'll tell you,
Yeah.
it's a great case. Um, the Washington D.C. in 1952, there were 11 lights over Washington D.C. They scrambled jets. They were on radar. That was, they had a lot of eyewitness testimony. That was a big deal case. And then finally, for me, I personally know Travis Walton. He
Hmm.
was a man that was abducted in 1975 here in Arizona in the mountains,
Yeah.
and
Snowflake, Arizona, I think, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
near there. Yep. And he was returned 5 days later. It was the largest missing persons search in Arizona history to that date. Um, and what I find compelling, to me, this is the best abduction case ever. In that there were 7 eyewitnesses. Each of them took 3 lie detector tests and passed all of them,
Hmm.
except the 17-year-old on one of them came back inconclusive because he was so darn nervous. And statistically speaking, that is 0% possibility that 7 people could lie 3 times on 3 different lie detector tests. So
Hmm.
I think that's super compelling. Um, I personally know Travis. He's a very non-sensational, humble guy.
Yeah.
He has never changed his story except for when he first came back. He thought, he was abducted, but after the trauma kind of quelled, he thinks they actually just saved his life because he foolishly ran into the electrical field of that UFO, and it killed him or injured him severely, and they took him to heal him and fix him, and then released him 5 days later. So that's the only change. Nothing changed other than his supposition as to their motive.
Hmm.
But that was just, in time he developed that view. So that tracks for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend reading anything you can on classic cases. There's so much investigation and effort gone into them. They're just terrific. Okay, the wheat and chaff of ufology. This is a chapter in my book, and what I'm referring to is wheat would be good information and chaff would be the nonsense, right? And ufology, like any topic of study, you're going to have disagreement. There's going to be many reasons for it. You're going to have people interpret things differently, the data, what it means. You're going to have to deal with disinformation, misinformation, religious fear, debunkers, hoaxes, fear of ridicule. cognitive dissonance, scientific skepticism, gullibility, carelessness, and a whole list of other things, right? It's really tough to sort through it all. So how do you distinguish what is legitimate? Well, just like everything else, you got to think critically for yourself. Does this make sense? Is there room or opportunity here for this to be misidentification or disinformation or misinformation, right? You've got to think it out. And then I always say, whatever gets presented to me, I'm going to start at ground zero as though it's false. Then I'm going to work up from there to try and prove it true, right? And like I mentioned before, a UFO investigation really is just a process of elimination. It's like, what's the most likely explanation for that light in the sky? Is it an airplane? Is it Venus? Is it a meteor? Blah, blah, blah. You go down the list until you get down to it's not any of those. So it must be, a true unknown. The other thing I caution when you're doing your research and, surfing the net and getting on Facebook and all that, when somebody says they know for a fact this or that, your BS meter should be pegging, right? Because, I will reserve the right for experiencers to know. Mm-hmm. Okay. They're nothing like being a believer in UFOs than having seen one, right? Yeah. Or believe in aliens having been abducted or contacted in some way, right? Mm-hmm. So there are people who know, but I'm speaking in general, public, the whole thing. If you got somebody that's saying, I know they're from Zeta Reticuli and they're this and they're that, you don't know that you don't. Mm-hmm. So stop saying that. Mm-hmm. You can say, I believe this is a possibility. Okay, I'm fine with that. But don't sit there and say, so be careful when you mm-hmm. see that. Mm-hmm. And then if a person is engaging in legitimate and sincere effort to research the topic, why is it some offense against humanity to earn money to do so? I throw this in here because a lot of the debunkers will say, oh, that guy, he's just in it for the money. Don't believe him, that kind of thing. That's not right. People dedicate their life to this stuff. I don't make one red cent on it. I've spent mm-hmm. thousands of dollars in my efforts and research and MUFON's not paid. You're just a volunteer. I wrote my book. I didn't make very much money on it, but that wasn't even my intent. I didn't care to make any money on it. But for some people who do and make a career of this, more power to them, especially if they're legitimate. Now, if they're not, that's a whole nother story. Mm-hmm. And I think my next slide or two might talk more about that. But any rate, those are just some things to watch out for. You've got to be discerning in your research and investigation because there's a lot going against you. Okay, cover up. That's a big popular topic, right? And conspiracy theories, let's put it this way. A cover up is generally thought to be an attempt to hide information to prevent knowledge of this information by others. That makes mm-hmm. sense. Likely the purpose is to hide some failure, protect from perceived harm, or to control something. That's why things are covered up, mm-hmm. right? However, cover-ups and conspiracies are real, and sometimes they're necessary, and sometimes they're good. Mm-hmm. So let me illustrate. Think about it. If you're a family, a corporation, a government, organizations have issues they wish to keep private. And it's not necessarily a conspiracy, which, by the way, is defined as a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. So we have family secrets, right? My wife and I have a fight about, something. Well, I'm not going to go talking to my friends or something about it. And, mm-hmm. and that's personal stuff. You don't air your dirty laundry. And if you're a government or a corporation, you have similar things. It's just being human. Mm-hmm. We do that. And so cover up is real. And to some degree, it's okay. It's legitimate. Absolutely. And the U.S. government has a long documented and provable interest in participation in UAP phenomena, despite their claims. So we mm-hmm. talked about that. They do cover it up, even though they have an interest. But they're going to tell you, well, for security reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or methods and names of people and all those things they got to protect, right?
Yeah.
I get it. That's a legitimate thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But not overdo it, which is where we find ourselves now. So
Yeah, but
cover up both for legitimate
mm-hmm.
and illegitimate reasons is a proven and real aspect of the UAP phenomenon. It's not crazy conspiracy theory. It's very real. But let me say, there are kooky conspiracy theories everywhere. So again,
Absolutely.
you got to be discerning and use your good judgment.
But it's kind of going back to what we were talking about before, and I was saying how after the Second World War, you had a very militaristic type of government in place in the United States, and they wanted to cover things up. Now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago about cover-ups, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been, frothing at the mouth and saying, whoa, why are they covering it up? Oh. But
Yeah.
now, when I look, and I'm a much more, I think I'm intelligent, rather. And when I look at different, governments, and I don't want to pick on different countries, but, there are certain countries that if they had this kind of information in terms of, let's say they are back engineering, according to, Bob Lazar. What if they are back engineering UFOs and they have this kind of flight technology? If that is the case, do we want that kind of flight capability in the hands of the Russians or others or other different types of groups? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
in that case, yes, I would like that information to be hidden. I think I've just sort of matured a bit, but it's other countries. What if China had their hands on it? Because China also has their own UFO program too, right? Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's not just the United States. A lot of
No.
different countries have their own programs and are using it for militaristic supremacy. So if that's the case, then we have to be careful in that sense because we don't want that kind of technology getting into the hands of people who might use it for nefarious reasons. So yeah, in
Exactly.
that sense, I definitely. But I think where I draw the line and where I had an issue is ridiculing people. If they had just respected people and said, "Well, we'll look into it," this
Yeah.
kind of thing, I would have been fine. But to completely, because I know that with the, as you mentioned before, with the Project Blue Book, they specifically, actually went out and made people's life a living hell. This is not
Yes.
hidden. This is not conspiracy. They actually went out and told their friends, stop talking to them, don't do this, don't do that. There's a lot of stuff that actually went down where people's lives were intentionally ruined. So that's
Right.
the part that I don't like. And I'm not
Agreed.
sure about this whole Men in Black thing. I don't know. But for me, the jury's out on that one. But I think if the government had not gone so far, it maybe would have had a different turnout. But I think right now, I think people are not as trusting of their government as they were back in the, let's say, the 40s and 50s. I mean, people had a very different approach. And I think that right now the government they must realize that because now you have, your 15-year-old with a computer can break into NASA, like
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time before this kind of information comes out. Or you have someone like Gary McKinnon who talks about, Solar
Yes.
Warden and talks about an, off-world. What do we make with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's complicated and it's just complicated. That's
Yeah.
it. Okay. Uh, this I'll just touch on this a little bit. I go real heavy in my book, but one of the most fascinating papers I have ever read is entitled Sovereignty and the UFO by Alexander Wendt and Raymond Duval. And they're a couple of political scientists. They're not UFO guys at all, but they observed the behavior of the government and the public and thought this was a really great study in psychology regarding UFOs. And it's you can download it from for free off the internet and print it out. It's maybe like 50, 60 pages. Um, but a couple of the principles they talk about. The first one is anthropocentrism. And according to Webster, it's defined as interpreting or regarding the world in terms of human values and experiences. In other words, we see and interpret everything from our point of view, And that's logical, but it can be limiting. It counts for some of our myopathy. So yes, we have imagination and we have science and we, all of that. But in the end, we see everything from a human perspective.
Hmm.
And as such, we are at risk, for misinterpreting what, you know, contact means or if they really come. And, communication is going to be huge. Will we even have the same ideas and minds and just, it's just incredible to think about. But um one of the things they talk about is governmental UAP denial. It's not only based on national security issues like we talked about, but on the governments of the world's fears of losing their sovereignty to the others. So, in other words, think about it. If they come and they're benevolent and they're, you know, way more advanced, powerful than us, are people going to go look into their local leaders or these countries where I'm bigger and stronger than you, I make more money than all the
Exactly.
human stuff that we do? Or are they
Exactly.
going to go, wow, these guys can get us somewhere, we can stop having
Exactly.
wars and
Hmm.
we have freedom and we have everything we need, right? And so they know that. And
Exactly.
this world is a nation, or it's a world of nation states that have
Hmm.
borders that intentionally create separation from groups of people so that they can control. And
Exactly.
they fear that more than anything.
Hmm.
And so
Exactly.
that was the conclusion they made, anyways, in this paper. I
Yeah.
just thought it was so fascinating. There's a ton more to it, but I encourage you, if you have the interest, read it. It's
Yeah.
it's really good.
We should. We
And I
should.
think even this guy here,
Mhm.
Alexander Went, was going to do a TED talk on it,
Oh.
and they at the last minute they shut him down. They didn't want him talking about
Oh.
UFOs.
Whoops.
So, but I don't know if they resumed. That
Control
was a,
much?
that was yeah. Isn't that crazy? I mean, so much
Okay.
for freedom of thought,
I
right?
guess not, eh? But that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. And I know that when the Condon Report came out back in the late 50s or 60s, whatever, one of the
Yeah.
things that they talked about, that if they were to, like what it's being said here, is that we would lose control, society would break down. Because society as it is right now, with certain nation states and certain governments in power, would cease to have any kind of power, and they would become irrelevant. So it seems that this is being echoed again in this particular paper. But if you have the link, we should let me have it, and I will post it in the chat. But that's very interesting, though. Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah.
All right. I think, yeah, this is my last slide here.
Okay.
So, as an investigator, what we want to do is follow the evidence. And essentially, belief is the acceptance of something as true without the proof, right? That's the definition. And I believe that it's a necessary function of human intelligence and logic, and it's part of the natural process of learning. So think about it. When even you go back to that scientific process, you make an observation and then you develop a theory. Well, what that developing a theory is, you have a belief. You don't have proof yet, but you think this is A or B. And then you go through the process to confirm it. Well, excuse me. So belief, it kind of fills in the gaps of our knowledge, right? We know this, but we don't know this, but we know this. And if we put a belief in there, it can get us to where we need to go and later come back and fill in the belief with proof, that with fact, right? So that, I think, belief is good and necessary. However, there's a danger with belief. Humans tend to allow belief to rise to the level of truth when it's not warranted. And I hate to use this example, but religion, right? And there's 3,000 religions on earth, and they all think they got the right one. And some of them will say, if you don't believe in my guy, I'm going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the greatest wars in human history are religious wars. See, this is where we have to be really careful as humans, is to not allow that belief to supplant truth. I'm not trying to be preachy here, but it
No.
has relevance in this topic. We got to be careful with that. And so, as an investigator, let's say I'm biased towards UFOs, or no, let's say, well, no, let's say I'm not. I'm a skeptic, right?
Okay.
And some, someone makes this report, and I go and investigate it, and I'm dismissing what they're telling me because I don't believe in UFOs. Well, my integrity as an investigator is already violated, right? I need to be completely biased. Um, but it can cause me to overlook things that they're saying or evidence or data that actually could point directly to it being, an unknown. So this is a danger, even just, your personal integrity and in your role as investigator, you can't do that. You can't put belief above data, evidence, and proof. Um, Now, the most effective way to manage credibility is to follow the evidence, and no one can justifiably refute a proven fact. So, the more you can align your case with that, the stronger that it is. And investigators, like I said, we need to be balanced and unbiased. We also need to be compassionate and treating our witnesses with the dignity and respect that they deserve. They came to us to to get help to deal with something that was at least minimally interesting to them to full blown traumatic, right? And we've got to make sure that we treat them with the compassion and respect that they deserve for coming forward and sharing that with us. So that's it. That is my presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be happy to answer any questions anyone would have.
Okay, that's great. Well, definitely want to have you give us the link to your book, and we can put that in the chat, and people can sort of check that out, and also the link to the other book there by Mr. Alexander Wendt, and that as well.
Gotcha.
And it's interesting because you're talking about really topics that people, I think, I don't really sort of take into account that often when they think about UFOs. And I'm glad you brought up the whole religious aspect, because I think that what's interesting, what a lot of people are saying, for example, especially people who are debunkers, people who don't believe in it, those people are saying that, according to science, it's not real. They're not even trying to look at it. And in some ways, some people have said that the new religion is science, because science has actually closed themselves off the way religion at one point used to close itself off about anything that had anything to do with anything outside the Bible. Would you say that to a certain degree, science is turning into a bit of a religious aspect in that sense, like that it's closed itself off, and a lot of people, especially
Yeah,
in your research?
I think there's always that danger.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but a true scientist, you know, should be able to put that aside. In other words, we've seen comments in our government that the people, the 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 gatekeepers on UFOs are religious people, and they think it's demons, and so they don't want to disclose anything. They don't want anyone to show interest in it. They're
Mm-hmm.
putting their religious belief above everything, you know.
Yeah.
But there are many members of the government that aren't like that and do think that we should release it and get it out there for people to know. So I think it isn't a scientist thing. It isn't a government thing. It's just human nature and behavior, and we all have to guard against it. So yeah, I think it can be an influence, no doubt about it. But hopefully, the science prevails, and good scientists don't allow themselves to be, um, you know, misdirected in that way. I would say
Okay.
you have to trust. You have
Mm-hmm.
to trust somebody, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, and right now, as an investigator, I think that if you could sort of have like a scale and say, okay, one side of it is complete disbelief and the other side is belief. Where are we on the scale? Like where's the needle at this point in time?
Yeah. I think belief is high,
Mm-hmm.
especially with since 2017, with all this visual video evidence coming from the military and high level people again with a lot to risk, Congress people, uh, many scientists coming out such as Avi Loeb and others, um, that it's no longer a question of belief that they exist. It's a proven fact.
Okay.
Something exists. We are engaging an intelligent, a non-human
Mm-hmm.
intelligence is engaging us. And that's that. That's not,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to debate that anymore.
Okay.
Now the debate should be who are they and what do they want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it serves the interest of some to keep us spinning our wheels like it's not even real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want us to be back in the 40s and 50s
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
No,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing it. We're too
Mm-hmm.
smart. We're too educated. We have too much information at our hands as a people,
Mm-hmm.
as a public. And that's why this thing isn't dying and it's not going to die. Now, they
Yeah.
may figure some diabolical way to keep it under wraps, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that's happening. And frankly, I reached a point in my own mind where I said, look, why am I asking the government to prove this? That's like asking the fox, hey, what happened to the hen?
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know, oh, I don't know. I'm not interested in the hen at all. Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. So, I fail to see why we give them that power.
Exactly.
I don't need you to tell me they're real or not. I have
Exactly.
them coming to my house. They're coming to my ranch every
Mm-hmm.
month.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to tell me anything.
No, for
And
sure.
many experiencers and abductees and contactees, they're
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, oy vey, why are we talking like this? We already know what's happening. So, but it's complex, it's ambiguous, and it's just really difficult to nail down. But to me, it's not just the destination, it's the journey, right? This what we're doing now is fun and it's interesting and it helps people and I just love it. And so if you're in this just to solve it, walk away
Yeah.
because the solving of it is not going to be quick and easy.
Mm-hmm.
We may never really get there. I think we will, but potentially it could go on for lifetimes. So
Well,
but I enjoy the experience.
yeah. I'm going to take a very different sort of tangent on this one because for people that know me and watch the show, I've often said that, and it's out there for people who want to believe or don't want to believe, that's fine. But one of the things that they're saying is that astrologically 2026 and 2027 are going to be very, very specific years where it's even written in the stars that we're going to have this kind of contact, that there's going to be meeting of two different worlds. And the last time they saw that same kind of placement is when the explorers went to the New World. And so there was contact with different groups of people. In my understanding, that could be something that might happen. I definitely feel that it's going to happen, but that's my own personal belief. And people are
Yeah.
willing, are fine to, believe what they want. But one of the things that I find what I'm proud of people is that when you look at something like the Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast of 1938 for
Yeah.
Mercury Theater, he put this radio show out, and for people who are not familiar with that, it was Orson Welles, who was a great actor director, and in his earlier years he had a group called the Mercury Theater, and they had a broadcast based on H.G. Wells' book War of the Worlds, but instead of having it in London at the 19th century, it was now fast forward to New York, I think, and in present day. And the way he did it was sort of like a broadcast. So it seemed like it was a real thing that was happening. And people were literally running for the hills. People were dying of heart attack, running for the hills. People went crazy. And there was all this mass panic. And one of the things that people have been saying for many years is saying that the reason why they don't want to expose this kind of information is because, well, there's going to be mass panic. And when I look at something like the Phoenix Lights, when I look at something like Hudson Valley, when I look at something like you know, for example, in 1989, when you had the in what is it in Europe, there they had the triangle UFOs that were over Belgium,
Oh, yeah.
over
Yeah, in
Belgium.
Belgium.
And
Hmm.
recently, a lot of stuff going on, and now with the thing that was happening in New Jersey, there was no panic. I mean, nobody was
Yeah.
running for the hills. Nobody was
Right.
going crazy. Nobody was trying to pack up their family in the van and take off. I mean, some people were saying, yeah, I'm concerned, but like, I still have to go to my job. Like, people were saying that. They were saying literally, I'm concerned. I wish the government had answers, but that's not going to stop me from, living my life. People were saying
Yeah,
that
exactly.
in different order. And so a lot of people have just said, look, okay, come out with it. And people were going to the government and asking for answers. And like you said, a lot of people got, a lot of bullshit answers. But but at the same time, people remained calm. People were cool and relaxed. And there's a lot of videos. And now with Three Eye Atlas, people are getting crazy on the internet. But again, I don't see people loading up their vans and their family and their farm animals and running off to the hills. I don't see that happening. So in some ways, I feel that we've reached a certain level of maturity. Now, for some people who have been experiencers, one of the things that they say when they have consistent contact with some of these different beings and groups is that they said that they're waiting for humans to be a little bit more ready for our presence, because the idea of them landing on the White House lawn, a lot of them have said, well, why don't you just land on the White House lawn and be done with it? And I said, well, that's not how we do things. We do not want to start panic and crazy. And to be honest, I think that would be a bit of a panic attack for a lot of people. Just have like this big ship, like kind of War of the Worlds. No, what is it? The UFOs have landed, I think. It was a 1950s film where you
Oh,
had that,
oh,
you know, it landed on the White House lawn, literally.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I don't know if that's really the best way. If you had asked me 10, 15 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, no way, woo. But like, I mean, I don't think that's the case right now. I think that right now,
Yeah.
maybe I've sort of matured and become an old fuddy duddy. But
Well,
I
I think
feel, I don't know. I don't know. Can we see you now? Like, we see your face?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They the day the Earth stood still.
They
That's the
did, they're
name of that
stood
movie.
still, like
Yeah,
on the White House
yeah,
lawn. I don't know
yeah.
if that's
That would be
really,
freaky.
that would be freaky. Even for
Hmm.
someone like myself, where I
Yeah,
feel like
I
I'm
think so.
ready, and I've had my own experiences and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's really the responsible way
Hmm.
to or like V from the 1980s, that miniseries V.
Yeah,
For those of us who
that
are
was
like,
pretty
well,
good.
I'm Gen X, so I remember watching all of that stuff. And so for a
Yeah.
lot of young people who don't know about V, it came on TV, and I think it was at NBC or something like that. And you basically had these massive, massive, massive ships sort of floating over all the major cities of the world. And people were running to and fro, but somehow, they announced themselves. Now, the most recent version of that I've seen was the Man of Steel, with the Man of Steel, the movie about Superman.
Yeah,
And at
yeah.
one point,
Superman.
they come on the TV and or even I think it was Transformers. They said, we have been observing you for many years, and they had like in different
Yeah.
languages and all that kind of stuff. So it has been broached in Hollywood.
Hmm.
And that's actually an interesting question. What do you think of Hollywood? Because Hollywood, even the Marvel movies, have said, well, they're aliens, and
Yeah.
they've been very out and open with it. And some of the or even a show like what is it, the Resident Alien. Some of the
Hmm.
stuff in that show is like, oh, I'm impressed, because they're going to the
Me
real
too.
nitty gritty, and I'm thinking, wow, someone who's really done their research. And
Yeah.
it's a fun show. I mean, yes, there's a comedy element, but there's
Sure.
a lot of deep stuff going on in there.
Yeah,
What
there
do you think of
is.
all that?
Oh yeah, no, there's people who like us everywhere.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
there was I've been involved with a few of these things, and there's really great writers. They do really great research, and they weave in, some of the themes that we all know are true and
Yeah.
accurate. And then of course, from a comedy perspective, spin it a little bit. But
Hmm.
yeah, I love that show, Resident Alien. And
Yeah, it's a
there's
great
been a
show.
lot of good ones. People of Earth is another one, if
Yeah.
you TV series you can see. But yeah, I think Hollywood is a, it's a mishmash. You've got the old stodgy 1950s kind of like, oh, they're bad, they're here to take our resources
Hmm.
type thing. And then, you have the more cerebral stuff like Contact or Arrival. And
Yeah.
so you have the spectrum of people who present it differently. And
Hmm.
and which one's right, I don't know. We'll
Hmm.
find out hopefully. But and then, I don't even discount people like Bashar. I don't know if you know who he is,
I
but
love Bashar. Are you kidding? Who
yeah,
are you talking to?
yeah,
I
yeah,
love
okay.
Bashar. I
So
absolutely love him.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and you're talking about the bullshit meter. Mine is very, very sensitive, and mine is quite attuned, and I can tell the BS when I hear it. And with Bashar, I've been listening to him for years, and he's the
mhm,
one who's the most consistent. That again,
yeah,
that's just me, and he is very. I find that he's very on the ball and on the money. None of the flowery. He'll cut you down
yeah,
and say, look, no. And I
yeah, yeah.
find I don't know. I find he's legit as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that when you were talking about 26 and 27,
Hmm.
I was kind of making that assumption that
Yeah.
that's something that Bashar is talking about. And so yeah, I follow him as well.
Hmm.
And I have a good friend that one of my key friends here, he's a fellow investigator, but he's a channeler and remote viewer and psychic and some other things. And
Hmm.
and I've just learned so much from that. And it just expanded my mind and my world. And I think that's where it's really at, is really consciousness and our ascension, getting our head around our place in the universe, being
Hmm.
able to accept and intelligent others. And face it, we need the help. We do.
Yeah,
We're
we do.
just, man, I can't believe we're still here,
I know.
based on our behavior and
Yeah,
thinking and
really.
actions. So
Hmm.
but anyway, I don't want to leave on a negative, but it's just such a fascinating topic, and it involves everybody on earth, and we all have a stake in it, and
Yeah.
it's important and all those things.
Hmm. Yeah. And can we see? Do you want to stop sharing your screen and we can just see
Yeah.
you just for 2 minutes there?
Okay.
Another thing that that it's funny because you mentioned that with Hollywood there was this whole thing with the movies and all that. And it's interesting because I know that in okay, I'd say that early 2000s, throughout the 90s and everything, we had like, what is it there, Independence
Independence Day.
Day and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
and all that sort of thing. And that was going for a while in the 90s. And I know that they tried to have a couple of movies. They had something 1942 or something like that where they tried to talk about the aliens coming in 1942. And then there was another one with Rihanna where she was working on some sort of ship, and then these aliens were in Hawaii or something like that, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Battleship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Battleship or whatever. And there's a couple of movies that have come and gone where they've tried to sort of show the negativity. And look, we can talk about the way in which Hollywood can sometimes skew, our perception, and they can also try to sort of negatively show a negative aspect. And maybe it's just me, because again, I don't have the facts, but I find that when I paid attention to some of these films, I find that they didn't do as well. And when you had films that were more of Arrival and more the cerebral type of films where they're looking at aliens from the same perspective, I find that those films did a lot better. Just the whole sort of flash and dash and these aliens going around killing everybody. I find they didn't do
Yeah.
so well. I didn't find they do
Yeah.
so well, and I think that there's a certain level of consciousness, because I know we talked about consciousness before, but there's a certain
Hmm.
level of consciousness, because if you look at the films from the 1950s and they're just going around and blindly killing everybody, you're like,
Yeah.
as a person now, I look at them like, oh no, no,
Yeah.
stop killing, even dinosaur movie. Why are you killing it? Why? It has a right to live.
Yeah,
It's an animal.
exactly.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
weird. And
Yeah.
now I don't find that just doesn't resonate. I don't know. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we have come a
Yeah.
long ways, and you know we're tired of the violence. We're
Yeah,
tired of the negativity,
we're
tired of
tired.
fear. Everything is fear
Fear.
based, just
Yeah,
fear, 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 fear.
yeah,
But that's because you can control people when they're in
exactly.
fear, right? So yeah, I try and avoid fear-based stuff myself
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there's a lot of very good, thoughtful
Mm-hmm.
uh, stuff regarding other non-human intelligence. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of movies that deal with it, in a more reasonable way.
Yeah,
But I mean, that that's why I just think we're in this weird period of time where I think things are changing.
yeah.
We we are changing.
Yes.
I hope it's for the better. I
Mm-hmm.
hope it is an ascension.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels pretty painful right now, right? The
Mm-hmm.
last 5, 10 years have been so dramatically
Mm-hmm.
divisive and
Yeah.
negative, and it
Mm-hmm.
never ends. And I
Yeah.
think people are just weary of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, I don't want to fight. I don't want to argue. I want to
Exactly.
just
I'm
be at
done,
peace. Yeah, I'm done. And
you know?
and so I think we are seeing
Yeah.
that collectively
Mm-hmm.
in humanity, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's what's necessary to get us to
Mm-hmm.
where they can engage us. But
Exactly.
you know, yep, media is big. It shapes minds.
It
So
does.
and
But
and you got to protect your own mind,
mm-hmm.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
gotta make sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I often say that it's a war for the minds, like they're really a war for
Mhm.
your minds and for what you're
It
thinking.
is.
And, this would just sort of touch upon what you're saying about how people are weary and tired and all that kind of stuff. I think there's also the fact that, news stories, as you know, in the news, a murder will sell a lot more clicks and a lot more papers than just, regular nice news. So they're going for that. And I think that people are aware of that now. I think people are much more, if 20 years ago, people would have been like, what are you talking about? But right now, people are realizing, and people are saying, for example, they don't watch the news. The news agencies are losing big time. And I think that YouTube, you can say what you want about YouTube and the social media, and I notice a lot of stuff. We could be here all night, but it's basically democratized our
Yeah.
ability to choose. And yes, it can end
Mhm.
up in echo chambers sometimes, for the negative.
Yeah.
And I understand, but that's not tonight's forum. But
Right.
at least it allows people to say, I'm tired, I don't watch the news. I often hear that now. People are saying, oh,
Yeah.
did you hear about so and so? Yeah, I don't watch the news. No, no, it's too negative. No, no, no. So people don't watch the news and they don't want the negativity. And a lot of people say it brings my energy down. The average
Yeah, it
person, not
does.
people who are like plugged in, but the average person,
Yeah.
oh, I can't. And I think that's what it is. People are just tired,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally. I agree.
yeah. Yeah, but you were also saying at the beginning, you were saying how you were doing the C-SETI 5, I think, type of
Uh-huh.
work. Can you sort of touch
Yeah.
upon that as well? Because I think that's very interesting. I think our members, and I'd love for you to come back at some point and talk about
Yeah.
that, because that's a whole
Yep.
other ball game,
Another
and
topic.
we can just
Yeah.
brush upon it quickly before we close for the
Yeah.
evening.
So, like I mentioned, we have, a group of like-minded people, 8 to 12 people that come over to the ranch, and we did one a couple weeks back, and we do a couple things. We had like 4 or 5 new people, and so we sat around the campfire, the bonfire, and we told each other kind of our stories, how we got here, and how that kind of thing, just to get acquainted, and then we were going to move everything out to this. I have a big arena,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see 360 degrees, and we set our chairs up in a row, and we do a meditation for about 15, 20 minutes, kind of lead it through a little meditation, get everyone's mind right. And then we try and engage and call them in.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the horizon, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these orb-like things start coming and interacting, and doing a dance, and clearly no airplanes, not bird, it's pitch dark. Um, and we make sure to convey that we have an open heart, and that we're peace and light and goodness, and we want to reach out and engage and share and all that kind of stuff. And so we've had multiple occasions where multiple craft have come craft or orbs, not sure what you want to call them, lights in the sky, behaving quite strangely. Um, and and it ends up being a very, warm moment for us, very thrilling. You feel connected, and it's a very positive experience. So um, we'll see where it goes from here, because that's happened, several times now. And I'm just curious what's going to come next.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's something you can do, people can do. You could do it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can also, let's see, Dr. Greer has an
Yeah.
application you can download,
Mm-hmm.
and it has like tones that you can play. And of course, of recent, this Jake Barber and his group called Skywatchers uh, have invented, excuse me, a tone that calls them in,
Okay.
and then they also perform what are called psionics, which is an individual who has the ability, psychic ability, to call
Mm-hmm.
them in,
Okay.
and they will respond.
Okay.
So we're mimicking that, and it seems to be effective and working.
Oh,
So, which I find fascinating.
that is
And
fascinating.
yeah, so, and we're probably going to do it next weekend or the weekend
Oh,
after here, and try again. The weather's good here. It's 60s at night, so it's real
you lucky
comfortable. And
dog.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm on my patio. It's great.
That's amazing. That's
But
great.
it wasn't so great 3 months ago.
Oh no?
I
Oh,
wouldn't be out here.
yeah, it'd be
It'd
too
be
hot.
115. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, probably
yeah,
not. Yeah. But and last but not least, just in closing, because you mentioned Bashar and I love Bashar and he talks about the SSani and all that. Based on your personal experiences that you mentioned having well, as a child having some sort of contact and through your investigations and all that and your own spiritual work that you've done in your own personal life. When I look at someone like Bashar, he talks about, and it's funny because I've been following Bashar for a long time, and he says you guys have to be careful because we're coming here at this time to make sure you don't go down the technological path. And I'm like, AI is here. It's taking over.
yeah.
I'm like, whoops.
I
I guess
know.
it didn't work out. I don't know what happened there because AI is about to blow. And like, I mean, it is blowing. What am I
Mhm.
saying? And I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
isn't this what Bashar was warning us about? But anyways, that's another story for another day. But
Oh, I know.
yeah, but no, I kind of, anyways. But looking back on your research and also your experiences and your own contact experiences and people that you've worked with, do you feel, you can tell me or yes or no, but do you feel there's a certain group, like certain groups of aliens? People often talk the usual sort of throw them around, oh, the Palladians, oh, the Arcturians, blah, 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 blah. But in your own personal research, and especially doing the C75 aspect, do you feel that there's a certain group that you personally resonate that you feel that this makes sense as opposed to this being BS and this is no and these people talk because a lot of people are out there on YouTube saying I'm connected with the blah blah people, and sometimes
Yeah.
I look at it and I'm like how do you feel, like which groups do you feel you resonate with apart from Bashar, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So this is the toughest thing for me is
Okay.
that uh, I I like to say anything is possible until it's proven not to be.
Okay.
And that is a motto that I've adopted because I left my religion. It wasn't spiritually satisfying, even though I was a spiritual person.
Okay.
And and so I'm in a different place. I'm more spiritual now
Mm-hmm.
than I was when I was a member of a religion, because that's more like a system of
Yeah, it's
rules,
more
and you had to
religious
do
as
this
opposed
and
to
that.
spiritual, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so what I'm getting at is that again, belief and fact, do this
Mm-hmm.
dance that it's like you're dancing with the devil and then
Mm-hmm.
you're dancing with an angel. It just it there's so much ambiguity with it. I don't hang my hat on any one thing. yet.
Okay.
A couple things. I absolutely know there is a non-human intelligence. I know that uh, paranormal and UFO or UAP are related in some way. And I know that I'm a positive person. I do the right thing. I do good things. I like myself, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I want peace and unity for all fellow humans and any other, uh,
Beings, I
you
guess.
know,
Yeah.
beings. Yeah. And, uh, and so I don't like some people say, oh, there's 87 races of aliens.
Yeah.
Well, I say, how do you know? You
But
know,
that's what I mean.
no,
What? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't ascribe to very little do I ascribe to
Mm-hmm.
in that way. However, at the same moment, maybe I'm weird, but uh,
Join
I
the club.
can I can accept any possibility. Okay, I could accept that there's 87
Mm-hmm.
aliens here on Earth. Different species or whatever you want to say. I can accept that as a possibility. I don't accept it as a fact yet. I just don't have. So this is my whole approach. I have like three or four things I know for a fact.
Okay.
Outside of that, I don't know that they're
Okay.
fact, but I accept that it could be. So I never look down on anyone or anyone's theory
Mm.
or what they feel or believe because they may have information I don't have. I'm not a judgmental person. That I left that with religion,
Okay.
right? No
Yeah.
judgmentalism. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of how I approach everything. I'm not gullible. I'm not a you know gullible person,
Mm-hmm.
but I can accept other people's ideas and
Mm-hmm.
thinking and if you're going to hold me to something, I'm going to need more than just somebody's belief and testimony. I'm going to need if I mistake my life on it or my family's life on it, I need more.
Yeah.
I need 100% fact.
Mm.
But I am very open to virtually any possibility.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Does that make sense, or
Yeah, no,
does it
that
make
makes
me too
sense.
wishy-washy?
Absolutely. No, 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 no. It's not wishy-washy. And I think that more people should be like that because I think what happens is that and you were saying before, people is so divisive right now and people are so, okay, no, but like, black and white. But I think that, again, my crutch, I guess, at this point is the media. The media has really done a job with screwing with people and
Yes.
dividing them and all that kind of stuff, and it's dividing among all these little lines. It used to be just sort of like, well, we all agree, but there's this one little thing that we don't agree on, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But now it's just sort of like,
Yeah.
everybody's sort of divided.
Yeah.
And okay, but you put your left shoe on your right foot. Okay, well that's it. No, I can't.
Yeah.
Why?
Nothing to do
So
with you. You're
no,
bad. Yeah.
exactly. So I'm going to shoot you now. But like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's really stupid. But like, I mean, I think that it's a situation where we're being divided, specifically divided, and I think that's what I mean by the war for our minds. I feel that this is the part where we really need to, as humans, sort of take a break and just say, cool it down,
Yeah.
and just say, what do I believe? Because I think that one of the things that's very powerful right now is a lot of people say, well, what resonates with me? It may not be fact, and it may not be fiction either, but what resonates? Because I think from a spiritual perspective, and I totally get it because there's a lot of the religion and this and that, but I think from a spiritual aspect, what's important is looking within. And I think that a lot of
Yeah.
people, and as much as I think, churches are nice and pretty and all that kind of stuff, and I admire certain aspects of the church in terms of like
Sure.
bringing people together and stuff. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the dogma and blindly accepting things, and even the church being used to divide people. Well, I
Yeah.
don't go to this church. This is a
Absolutely.
black church, but then there's only white people here. No, no, no. Come on. You think
Yeah.
Jesus would really
Yeah.
turn around and say, okay, no, only a black church or white church? What kind of garbage is that? Anyways, because
Yeah.
I don't want to start
Nonsense.
swearing either. But like, I mean, the thing is, but the thing is that I feel that a lot more people are turning off the news, which is true. That I know for a fact. That
Yeah.
people are turning off the news, and that statistically speaking, for a fact, news agencies are going down in popularity. They're not having the same kind of effect in numbers, unless there's something really big like you know, like what's happening in Israel or something like that, that kind of thing. Okay. But in general, a lot of people are turning away from that, and they're trying to, some are informing themselves, not all, but a lot more people are just saying, you know, it has to just work for me and it has to resonate. And you know, I think also what people used to feel under a lot of pressure. Well, you have to be on one camp and you have to know everything and it has to be black and white and it has to be this and that. And I think that people are saying, you know what? I don't need to know everything. I don't need to prove anything to you. And if it works for me, that's fine. I'm not going out and killing people. It's just my
Yeah.
belief. And my belief might be, you know, believing in, you know, lollipop people. But if that's what I want
Yeah.
to believe in, then that's what I want to believe in, and that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
As long as you're not hurting someone else, then
exactly.
that's cool. Yeah.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
fine with that as well. Yeah. Because, being dogmatic never serves anyone well. I mean, it just doesn't. You got to be open-minded, you got to be kind, you got to be compassionate and loving, and give people their space and let
Mm-hmm.
them have their own thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you got to make sure your own thinking is straight. So again, it's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really all about life, right? Again, I go back, this whole thing is about humans, you know, um,
Mm-hmm.
and our response to it.
Yeah.
So,
You know what? Because of the issues with YouTube, it seems that I was my moderator wasn't able to see some of the questions that we had. So I just want to just sort of
oh,
look, and
bummer.
I feel bad because it's kind of late and I'm thinking, oh no. But there's a whole bunch of comments, but I'm not sure. I'm just going to take a look here. So I don't want to leave people out because the people, you know, have come in and just want to just see here if we have any questions. Oh, there's Kelly. Hi, Kelly. I love Kelly. And just want to see, guys, if you have. Okay, so I have Kelly Wacker here. She's asking, has he had any negative contacts?
Nope.
You haven't had any negative contacts. Okay, so
Nothing
that's pretty
negative.
good. Nothing negative. Um, mm-hmm. Your own spiritual journey. I'm just trying to take a look here. Okay, I have another question here from Kelly. Does he use Dr. Greer's CE5 contact app? Yeah, I think we talked about that. And play the frequencies to call and attract UFOs. Yeah, I think we covered that, Kelly. So I think as we
Yeah,
were talking,
we've used that before.
yeah,
Yep.
we used that
We don't
before.
always do that though.
Okay. And
Yeah, you
and
don't
what
have to.
and what are these tones? Are these particular solfeggios or what are these tones exactly? Just so
The-
people understand what it is.
yeah, so they put together, they're like electronic tones. Um, One set of tones was taken from a crop circle, and they somehow picked up these tones and they put it in a loop, and you play that loop all over.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other tones that he's put together that he's used over the years and seemed to get responses, and I think that's more credible now, um, with the advent of the Skywatcher team, who is also using tones to make contact,
Mm-hmm.
and theirs might be different. They're a blend of different frequencies and other tones. I think you can get it out there off the internet. You can search for it, and download a file if you want, and
Sure.
then you don't have to use any tones if you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to. And then, oh, I was going to say, it's kind of interesting to me, one of the greatest UFO movies ever is Close Encounters of
The
the
third
Third
kind.
Kind.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and what was it that they used to communicate
Do
with?
do 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 do.
Do, do, do. Tones,
Tones.
right?
Yeah.
There's something to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There genuinely is. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you could try it. You could I have his app on my phone, and we use it occasionally, and then
Mm-hmm.
we use the other tone generator that we had, and then sometimes we just do a meditation. In fact, when I told you earlier, we were all sitting around the campfire telling each other stories because we had new people,
Mm-hmm.
and then we were going to go move out into the arena and call them in. Well, they showed up before we even got through talking to each other. Like two or
Oh.
three people got to tell their thing, and they already showed up. Like they weren't waiting for us. They're like, "Hey, we're here." We
Okay.
didn't even do anything directly into calling them in. They appeared. So
Yeah.
whatever your consciousness, your intention, um, those are really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The most powerful thing is, again, approach with love and light
Mm-hmm.
and openness and positivity, and that's what you'll get back.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in that movie, Contact, I think the whole concept of that was that math was the top,
Universal
the
language.
universal
Yeah.
language. And going back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I can have the poster right there. Um, the the tones are, it's math, like
Yeah.
it's mathematical in a sense that these tones could reach and I think that at the time is funny because there's a lot we can go into another rabbit hole with like Close Encounters, a lot going on there, we just don't have the time
Yes.
today. But
Yes.
in terms of the tones, looking back, and again, you see things differently looking back, because I remember seeing that in the theater as a child, and my mother and I were there for like 10, like back in those days you could stay in the theater, and we were just
Yeah.
sitting there watching like like 7, 8, 10 times. It was crazy.
Oh,
but
wow.
um but it's all, but I think that when I look at that, there was a way that the tones were mathematical, and that if you could
Hmm.
take that tone, if
Hmm.
Close Encounters were made today, I think it would be a very different movie, because it would just be like the tones would be reaching a mathematical, and you could use AI to sort of translate
Yeah.
the tones. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. No,
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. I'm just trying to take a look here at some, it's like a quick, get some of those quick questions in. Um, Let me just see here. And they say that Star Wars was based off Cosmic Wars. Okay, that's interesting. That's kind of interesting. A lot of people are saying that. So at the end, okay, we've had one thing that I wanted to sort of point out. We were saying how up to now, I think Kelly brought that up. She says that we haven't had any negative, contacts, and and there's also this whole idea of the U.S. pretending to be aliens, and they're using their own type of thing. That's a whole other story. But one of the things that I often hear is, for example, when you had the Fukushima whole
Hmm.
meltdown there, and
Yep.
there's a lot of people were seeing UFOs. Now it's one thing that
Yes.
one person here sees it and that's it, but people all over were saying we saw the UFOs.
Yeah.
They came down. They it looked like they were doing something with the water. And what was weird, and this is fact, because we're talking about what's fact and what's fiction,
Hmm.
and what's fact is that the people that came to Fukushima to test the water to see how bad the issue was, like the scientists that came in, they tested the water and everything, and they found that it was very, very high. The radiation was very, very, very high. And they weren't paying attention to the UFOs. But people who were in different parts of the island were looking and saying, well, I see these lights and they're coming
Yeah.
down and they're in the water and it's and they said we don't understand what's going on. And it seems that the same scientists that left after, who had nothing to do with the UFOs, they said they tested the water again, because they're constantly testing to see what was going on, to see how bad it was. And when they finally
Hmm.
tested it towards the end, the radiation had gone right down. So
Wow.
you know that
Yeah.
it, and I've heard that again and again, where a volcano explodes, or something going on, and the UFOs, they all come, and they do stuff, and they're
Yeah, that's right.
protecting this planet, and but they're trying to be
Yeah.
discreet. I don't know what's your
Hmm.
opinion on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is right. There's lots of accounts, and of course, there's a lot of accounts that are very popular and
Mm-hmm.
factual again, where they approach military nuclear facilities uh, and civilian nuclear facilities. We have a plant right here in Arizona, about 50 miles from me, and they had some incursions 3 years ago uh, of drone-like things, lights, and around there, and they scrambled their security in the '60s, both in South Dakota, Minot, South Dakota, and then Maelstrom in Montana. They had silos that UFOs came over and shut down 10 different silos of nuclear missiles, and they did the same thing in the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
So they're clearly, there's a fantastic book and movie called UFOs and Nukes, and
Yeah, I heard about that.
I
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah.
It is so well
Is that
done.
by
And
Robert Salas, I think? I think we're
Robert Hastings.
Robert Hastings. Okay.
Yeah, Robert Salas was the commander in the one of the Maelstrom, I think, incident. But Robert Hastings has cataloged all the instances where UFOs have engaged various nuclear sites and facilities and so forth. It's just a wonderfully done, very factual movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I recommend it if anyone, has that opportunity, check it
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've had a chance to sort of like breeze through the comments. We had a lot of comments, and I think that we've covered some of the questions. So I think that we're good tonight. Just wanted to say
Great.
thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming here. I absolutely love your presentation. Your presentation was amazing, and you have
great.
so much information to offer our members. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. You're great. I love your energy. You're absolutely great. Thank you. And I really would like to have you come back to the show because I think there's a lot of different things because
Oh yeah.
it's great to start off with what we're doing here in terms of just like a basic introduction. But what's
Yep.
interesting about yourself is that you have the UFO side, but then you have, like you said, all this other stuff that's going on. And I
Hmm.
think that if anything, this could be a part one to looking at different aspects because there's so much. And I think that right now there is a lot because it's not the 1970s where it was just the nuts and bolts. The
Yep.
70s, 80s, really 90s even, a lot of the nuts and bolts. And I find that now we're getting more into this whole spiritual. Since Greer I think released it in 93, I think when he first started that whole thing.
Yeah.
So 90,
Yeah.
93. And so we're going out on a different path. So I'd love to have you come back and
Yeah.
discuss this, but I want to just say thank you, and I want to say thank you to our members out there for being with us tonight and for joining us to discuss this amazing topic, which I think is starting to open up and blossom. I think this is no longer the 1970s and 80s. I think we're really going on a different path here. And my own personal opinion is that I feel that the consciousness is rising. Don't let the media or the news give you otherwise. All they're doing is showing you the negativity, and they're not showing you all the good that's happening on this planet and how people are coming together and how people are wanting to save the animals, which is such a big thing for me, and all that kind of stuff. I'm such an animal lover, and so people are realizing that we're one. You know,
Right.
we are one.
That's right. Yeah.
And
Well, thank you
animals.
so much,
Yeah,
and it's great to get to know you,
yeah,
and
absolutely,
I hope everyone enjoyed it,
absolutely.
and will hopefully gain something in their own journey,
Yeah.
uh, because I highly recommend it. It is so worth it to be involved.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So perfect. So thank you again, Mr. Hurd, Shane Hurd, everybody. I'm going to get some of his links and then put them in the description below, and you can check out some of the work that he's done. Definitely check out his book, and then we'll definitely have him back on the show. So Shane, please stand by, and then we'll talk a little bit more. But thanks again, everybody. And do you have an email where people can contact you if they have any questions or comments or
Yep.
stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
can reach me at Shane at phoenixmufon.com.
Okay, great. So we'll put that down as well. And I'll
Yeah,
ask
I'll
the
send you
moderator
that.
to put that in the chat as well. And people can contact you, but we'll have you back. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care and have a wonderful evening. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.